A huge warm welcome to episode 1 of the Change the Balance podcast and YouTube channel. I am so excited to be here and kicking off just this incredible podcast that I know we have so much incredible knowledge and wisdom and excitement to share. So we wanted to start off by sharing a little bit about who we are. I'm Charlotte. And sharing a little bit about the journey that brought Sabrina and myself together. So I'm going to throw over to the amazing Sabrina to kickstart us and tell us a little bit about where our journey started, which was, 2.5 years ago now?
I think it must be creeping up on 3 years now. So hi, I'm Sabrina Shadie. Charlotte and I both have been on really similar journeys over our careers, while still being very different. And we met on a online kind of during COVID networking business entrepreneurship program, which is run by NatWest.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the event was about or what the content of the event was supposed to be. Charlotte and I met in a breakout room, hit it off, got on really well, recognized that we had a lot of shared values, particularly around education and around inclusive practices and around our kind of shared values around how we deliver our businesses, both being, from a training background. So all of that meant that we sort of were quite keen to book another meeting and have a longer catch up. We weren't so time restricted, which has been good because over the 2 years we have had the longest Zoom calls I think in ever. I think Charlotte is the person I probably speak to the most in this medium, and for the longest time. So that was the kind of the beginning of our journey together, about sort of just chatting about being in that training space during COVID when you couldn't deliver in person, and that kind of was our initial discussion around how that impacted our business. But actually we found we had a lot more connecting us than just the training element.
I remember meeting you and in that breakout room and just instantly being drawn to your energy and thinking I knew I needed to speak to you again. I just knew that I needed to kind of connect in a one-to-one space, as opposed to, oh, these are the people that just happen to be around us,
get in the way of our conversation.
So it was just a really, I think instantly for me, I just knew that there was a spark between us. I had no idea we'd be on the journey that we're on, as you say, 3 years later. But there was just something there that instantly, I can't even really explain what it was. It was just an instant kind of energy that made me know that I needed to meet you.
That kind of, there's something that drew us together that felt like a really shared, like we already knew each other, like we already had so much in common. That kind of, that just emanated. So we kind of started booking quite regular-ish calls, which just carried on for the whole time. It's very rare we now go like more than a week without speaking. Absolutely. Whether it's WhatsApp or
and usually at least an hour or so. At least that we promise to keep these podcasts way less than way less than we would talk normally. And I think it's been a really interesting journey because we met, and I'm going to take us right back to that first kind of 2 or 3 conversations where we met during a politically challenging time because Black Lives Matter was going on, and there'd been lots of stuff going on globally around that. And very graciously, Sabrina always allowed me the space to navigate that, even though I've always been somebody who thought I was quite world aware. And I think that's been the best conversations, which is part of the reason why the podcast is going to be so beneficial, because it's those conversations that from the off that we were both able to have from that shared values system that we both have, but just also and I'm going to use the word naivety to explain, to those listeners who will be listening in thinking, I know lots about, racism and sexism and misogyny and disability and an ableist world and all of those things that are, protected characteristics, and some, as we'll kind of navigate through the podcast. But I really was naive to the depth of what was happening around me. And I think one of the things that we're really keen to share through the podcast is that relationship that we've had to really create that space for other people to share in those conversations too.
Yeah, it's about the opportunity to explore, because I think a lot of people get so scared by saying the wrong thing or causing offense or being seen to be racist, sexist, homophobic, you know, one of those kind of tags being added to it, that they just withdraw from the conversation. And that's really damaging for, you know, for everybody, because then the conversations aren't being had. So for us, I think it was very much about being able to explore it together with that mutual respect and care for each other, because I know I'm not going to get it right all the time. Yeah, I'm a Black female with a disability and like lots of lived experiences in different protected characteristics, but that isn't the same as being from one of those protected characteristics, with that set, slightly different set of intersectionality challenges. I cannot know what that is for every single criteria for people. So I still always have a lot to learn. And I think coming from that perspective, as we have done in our conversations, going, we're both learning, we're not always going to get everything right, but our intention is to do that with an open kind of mindset. And that's kind of what we wanted to share with everyone, really, because it's a much better learning journey than the guilt and the shame and the fear and the
embarrassment
and quite unhealthy and quite unproductive challenges that we see quite often, where the challenge shuts down a conversation completely, rather than providing the route to education that person requires to make better decisions or use in better language or whatever that thing is that they need to make that change. And change is really the ideal outcome. We want better. We need to
change the balance. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it nods to our introduction. It's about, we're very good, I think, as allies, and we'll be exploring what do we mean by allies, and what does that look like, and how do we become a better ally in future podcast episodes. But one of the things that's really important is that when we're looking to know better, do better, be better, we often come from a very head led. So it's about the mindset, it's about the kind of knowledge that we have. But one of the things I think we really really worked well together was that heart and soul. So it wasn't just about, I have to do better because legally I'm told to do better, or I have to do better because it's the right thing to do. I want to do better. I want to make sure that I'm creating safe and inclusive spaces, whether that's in my learning spaces where I, help education improve the safe and inclusive spaces, or whether that's in my local community. I want to do better by human beings. And that comes, very much from the heart. But actually, I would go so far as to say the soul. And I think there's lots of people around me who want to do better. They just don't necessarily know. And we can read lots about it, but we never read about the things that went wrong, apart from the death. It's very
when they
black
go
and white.
so wrong. It's like when they get to that critical level, that's when we hear about it. The George Floyds and so on that we see in the media. And actually, there's lots of steps before we get to that stage where interventions that change the balance would have a big impact on the outcome.
Yeah, and I think that's a really that's drawn us together and united us in a really organic way. I think it would have been really easy for us 2.5 years ago to go, oh, we need a podcast. We really could have. We probably should have recorded. In all fairness, we probably
some of those conversations.
We probably have enough content for 100 episodes, but there was something really organic about getting to know one another and really making sure that the kind of togetherness was on the same page, and that is a journey. It's been a journey for sure for me, and I'm sure a journey for you to get to know me as well. And I really feel that this podcast is a place where you can, as a listener, start to explore what that means for you. And I've no doubt disagree at some point with us. There's 100% you're going to disagree. And I don't think we've disagreed that much. There's been interesting conversations, but I would say 99% of the time we've agreed. But we've definitely had conversation with people who don't always agree with our viewpoint, and that's okay. It's about the narrative, and I guess we both very much sing from the same hymn sheet that we need to be having the conversations in the first place.
I think our relationship's actually a really good reflection of what we're talking about in terms of recognizing our differences and capitalizing on our similarities, you know, and the things we have got the same. So where our values are the same and our work ethic is the same, and our ability to talk for hours on end is the same. You know, our sense of style, how we dress, the music we listen to are all very, very different. Our upbringings have got some similarities, but are actually still very different. So bringing that together and recognizing the added value of our differences while capitalizing on our similarities, I think is really key. And I think that's the blueprint, that's the template for how we improve inclusion out into the world. Recognize we don't have to have exactly the same music taste or exactly the same trainers on or exactly the whatever same stuff, but still going, oh, your value is, you know, makes my value more, you know, not just 1 and 1 makes 2, but 1 and 1 makes potentially infinity, because that wider reach and that bigger appreciation for you know, the world through different perspectives. And I think that's what we're trying to sort of almost share with everybody.
Yeah, and I think it's that warts and all as well, isn't it? I mean, you know, I am quite open, and I've made some terrible mess ups. And, you know, one example is somebody asked me via social media for some feedback on a service that we were both, I'd accessed before, and she was looking to access. And in my absolute enthusiasm, you will learn that I get quite enthusiastic about a lot of things. Just pre-warning those of you who are listening in and don't quite know me yet. But in my enthusiasm to share how great this person was, I jumped straight on and did voice notes. And I talked for 3 minutes. And it wasn't until I got to the end and I read the message that it was a written message that said, I'm deaf. Now, there wasn't anything in what I was doing that was intentional, but my goodness, that emotional pull was awful. I was really mortified, if I'm being entirely honest, that I'd made this just assumption that a voice note would work for her. And it really didn't. So having the opportunity to share in what isn't always the ideal situation is all part and parcel of the learning curve. And we need that space. We need that opportunity to kind of reflect and go, oh my goodness, I really messed up. But that self-compassion also to say, yeah, everybody messes up sometimes. So yeah, I'm really excited to share, I guess, my journey to evolving as a human being to become more inclusive and create more safer spaces. Really excited to share that with our listeners too.
And I think it's very much a circular process, you know, the plan, do, review model of just kind of, yeah, you got that one right. Now you don't just do voice notes without checking with the person if that's the appropriate communication method for them. I had a similar thing with like alt text on posts, for alt text for your pictures on posts, or image descriptions. And I hadn't, you know, even as an EDI expert, it's not a term I particularly like, I hadn't considered the fact that, you know, visually impaired people might be engaging with my content and being discriminated against because they don't know what the image contains, because I hadn't put alt text on and I hadn't shared an image description. That was mortifying for me.
Yeah.
Here I am, you know, leading in this space. And I made an absolute, you know, dropped the ball completely on that one. And one of my kind of followers, one of my contacts messaged me and said, oh, you know, I can't engage fully with what you're sharing. I love your message, but I don't know what your images are because you're not providing that extra information. And being comfortable enough to be vulnerable to go, my mistake, I'm going to address that and make the change to improve engagement in future. I think how we communicate is probably the first point of reference. all the policies and all of that stuff, yeah, you can have it all, but if you're not actually improving your communication methods so that you are more accessible to people, then it doesn't matter how great your policy is, no one will ever find out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's so much that, you know, we've talked lots, haven't we, about what does episode 2, 3, 400 look like? And there's so much that we want to unpick within the podcast because it's such an important topic, and it's something that's, you know, as I say, really dear to us, but also to those people who don't really have that space to unpick, and it can be quite a scary space, the EDI space. You know, I am straight, white, you know, I've got bobbed hair, I'm as cookie cutter as they come in many, many ways. And I kind of, to an element, understand to a certain, I would say, breadth of the EDI space, but I certainly don't understand the depth. And that whole ability to have a safe space, to have that narrative and have that uncomfortable conversation, I think it's really easy for us to think that we have that, but I really realize that we don't have that, and it's such an important thing to be able to self-reflect.
And I think culturally there's a real challenge in terms of conversations around anything EDI linked, where there's unfortunately a habit of jumping on that person to correct them, but not, like I was saying earlier, not in a productive way, often quite in a shutting them down kind of way, which doesn't move us to where we're trying to get to. So for us to have a space that you're not going to get jumped on here, you're going to get supported, you're going to get guided, you're going to get you know, some advice and some tools and some resources and some you know, that input that is exactly what we've probably always wanted and needed in those conversations. You know, if you do, in any environment, when you do something wrong, the last thing you want is somebody to hold you up in, like, you know, up on the screen where everyone can see you and go, look what this person did. Like, that's not what we're doing. We're not here to out people and to humiliate people or embarrass people. It's about, okay, the reason that didn't work is this, and these are the ways that we can help you to move that forward. And learning from our experiences, a natural human, you know, evolution. That's not a bad thing. It's whether you learn from the experience or whether you keep compounding that experience by not making the changes required. And without the support and the direction, you can't make those changes. That's why building this sort of community and having these resources like the podcast is going to be so important, because lots of people, you know, we're not aware. There's lots of people having conversations around EDI. There are lots of podcasts around inclusion or accessibility and all of those things. The reason we feel that Change the Balance is maybe a little bit different is because we haven't come at it from you know, wanting to tell everybody what it's supposed to be like. We came from wanting to share the journey that we've been on, because we feel there's a value to that our lived experience of going, oh, our different experiences have caused us to have conversations that would probably be really beneficial for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is probably a really good point to take a step back a little bit. And I think it would be really beneficial for us to just share maybe a little bit about pre-Change the Balance, really. So what kind of led you to get to the NatWest Accelerator, I suppose?
Okay, so my career in equality, diversity, inclusion spaces started in the late 90s. My younger brother was attacked by members of the BNP and was non-fatally stabbed, which you can imagine, I was 19, he was 17, had a massive impact on our family and a massive impact on me in terms of suddenly having to realize that, having been born in the UK, having lived there all my life, my mum was born in the UK, you know, like it, but then finding out that there's people out in the world who don't think we belong here. This is not really our home. Not because we don't think it is, but because we're being told that it's not. That that journey put me on a path to become a youth worker, to work in diversity and trying to make things accessible. I went through 15 years in public sector, writing accredited programs, trying to be inclusive for young people, working with young offenders, working in multidisciplinary teams, trying to really bridge a lot of those gaps that we see, you know, in terms of the disparities, particularly socioeconomic, ethnicity, religion, gender, because I could just see these amazing young people and these amazing communities not getting the opportunities, not being able to engage, not getting the funding, not getting that, not, you know, just, and I wanted to do something about it. 15 years later, I was kind of exhausted, if I'm really honest. And I came out of the education system primarily because my daughter got ill. She has a significant heart condition called cardiomyopathy. I became her full-time carer. Don't listen to anyone if they tell you you can live on the benefit system. It is not life. It is sustenance only. And after 18 months, quite a roller coaster journey of my daughter being very poorly and then getting better, but still not well enough for me to go back into employment, I decided to start a business because I realized I wasn't the only parent carer in the situation I was in. And I could see the battles between, you know, the education system and the medical treatment programs. You know, hospital wanted her there every Tuesday, but that means that she missed all her, you know, she was missing maths lessons in the run up to GCSE. Like, that's really damaging for her education. How do you choose between her health and her education, like her future or her future? It was just such a challenge. And we found lots of other parents had the same challenging experiences. So we set up the DeRose consultancy, DeRose Development Consultancy, as a way to provide education, training, support to parents, but also to businesses and service providers, to try and bridge those gaps where people weren't accessing what they needed or didn't know the route to access it. And I'm really lucky, I came from public sector, so I had a good understanding of writing care plans and you know, what accessibility should look like and what the legal duty of care is for a school in terms of disability. I knew that stuff. I've come from that background. But imagine now if I'm a parent who English isn't my first language, and I'm trying to navigate that same system with none of that background knowledge. The challenges are just off the scale. So that was kind of where I started. So that was like 2017. Turning all of that into something that vaguely resembled a business. And now
is absolutely a business.
It was a bit sketchy at start.
And I think I've been on that journey for the last two and a bit, like say 3 years, and it's just been a wonderful journey to watch, and that just is real testament to the heart and soul. So it isn't just about the money, which absolutely, money is not a dirty word in our lives, is it? You know, it's absolutely part and parcel of why we do what we do. However, the heart and soul was also part of the let's see how we can help other people. And that's such an important part of, you know, I guess any business, but when we look at Change the Balance and what we're growing with Change the Balance, it's such an important part of what and why we do what we do.
I mean, it definitely purpose driven. So this, you know, the passion and the purpose and the commitment to changing the balance is something that we both have a commitment to. Have you met us just walking down the street, like in our like off duty days, or you see us delivering on behalf of Change the Balance or either of our other businesses, you will see the same level of passion and the same commitment and the same empathy around this topic, because it is like built into the DNA of what we do and of who we are. So that's, I think that's probably the key part of why we got on so well and how comes we've developed Change the Balance the way we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, just to bring up and summarize episode 1, I guess, you know, that time has flown by. So we will have no problems in sharing our thoughts and our feelings and our opinions with you guys. Don't worry about that. And the excitement, hopefully you really feel from us, because we have so much to give. And in future episodes, I'll be able to share a little bit about my background and where that comes and where that's been kind of featured and what brings me to this point as well. And you'll get to know about those experiences. You'll get to know about those thoughts. You'll get to know about our viewpoints around what and why and how we need to come together as a community, and we need to be sharing those similarities and differences. So we really, really hope you've enjoyed episode 1, and we really hope to see you up over on the other side for episode 2. In the meantime, thank you very much, and we will be popping contact details in the show notes. So if anyone does want to come and say hello, absolutely feel free to get in touch. We really, really welcome that interaction.
Our contact details will be included as well, so you can find us on LinkedIn and so on and so forth. But thank you, and we will see you on the flip side.
Yes.